Let's subtract the fractions 15/16 minus a quarter. We'd like to use our rule on the right for subtracting fractions, but our rule on the right is for common denominators. In other words, if we have a fraction over the common denominator we're subtracting, then it tells us to subtract the numerators over the common denominator. Right now, we have different denominators that are not common. So our first goal is to find a common denominator and convert each one of these fractions to equivalent fractions with that common denominator. So the question arises, what is the common denominator? To find it, we'll use multiples to find it. So we'll list the first multiple, 16. A multiple is by adding each number to this number, coming up with sequential numbers. For example, our first multiple is 16, and adding 16 to that, we'll get 32. Adding another 16 will become 48. And adding another 16 will get 64, and so on. The multiples of 4 are where we'll list our first number, 4, and continually add 4 to that to come up with future multiples. So 4 plus 4 is 8, and 8 plus 4 is 12, 12 plus 4 is 16, 16 and 4 is 20, and so on. Our common denominator is the lowest common multiple in these lists. In other words, the first number that appears in each list. We see that that number is 16. So that means that we want both of our fractions to contain the common denominator of 16. Let's next convert each one of these fractions to a common denominator of 16. Well, in our first case, our first fraction already has 16 as the denominator, so we don't have to convert it to an equivalent fraction. However, in our second case, 1/4 needs to be converted to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 16. How do we do it? Well, 4 multiplied by what would become 16? Well, we would need to multiply 4 by 4. And if we multiply the bottom of a fraction by 4, we'll multiply the top by 4. So 4 times 4 certainly is 16. 1 times 4 is 4. We now have an equivalent fraction to 1/4, 4/16. And in fact, now we have two fractions that have the same common denominator. So subtracting two fractions with common denominators means using our rule that we'll keep the same common denominator and subtract the tops. That means 15/16 minus 4/16 becomes 15 minus 4 all over 16. And 15 minus 4, simplifying, becomes 11 over 16. Our final answer is 11/16.